Okay, today I'm going to show you how to process and clean up a 3D model of a house for an exterior project. So a client has sent us a pretty basic 3D model which looks a lot like this. This has been modeled probably in AutoCAD or Revit, and they've exported a DWG for us to use. They're usually not too bad, but there's quite a bit of work involved in putting this onto the right layers, sorting it all out, so it's something that we can use for creating 3D renders. So let's jump into it. So first of all, I'm just going to open up Connector, and we're going to go into our starting scenes, and we're going to open up the architectural starting scene, Corona. This is going to open up 3D Max. It's important to always start from this architectural starting scene for this particular process, because it's got all our layers and some lights and stuff and all the settings that we need already in the Max file. So let's just quickly check out this house again. As we can see, it's kind of got a brick wall here, so we're going to separate everything into the layers, so brick walls, roof, gutters, garage door, all the landscaping stuff. The other thing, so it's always important to sort of have a little bit of a look around the house that you're going to be modelling. Check out the schedule. So you can see here what colours are, what different render, so the main render and the contrasting render. We've got a face brick, so there's basically three types of walls. The posts is a different colour, so we'll put them on different layers, paving, that sort of stuff. Important to note that there's a front entry handle specified what that looks like, so we'll have to Google that and see what that looks like, and replace the one that comes in the model. So let's jump into this. Okay, so as you can see, our 3D Max starting scene comes with a whole bunch of layers. We've got the assets layer, which is where we put all our furniture, people, props and vehicles. You won't need to worry about that for now, so we can turn that one off. The building layer, this is the layer that we're using mostly today. It's got all the sub-layers for all the parts of this house. So ceiling, doors, floors, garage door, roof, gutters, all those sorts of things, the walls, interior walls. We've got a camera and a sun in our scene for the next stage in the process. We won't be using that today. There's also a reference layer, which is if we were modelling from a set of plans, which we're not today. We're modelling from the model. And then our landscape layer, which has things like the driveway, fence, decking, garden beds, grass, all that sort of stuff. Anything that's outside the house goes on the landscape layer. So the first step is we want to save our scene as something different. Obviously save this in the projects folder. I'm just going to save it on my desktop for now. Name it and save it in the projects folder where the house is, the project that you're working on. Important to always do this step at the start so you're not overriding the architectural starting scene. So now we're going to import our DWG model. So really important to not drag this in from the 3D models folder. If you drag it in, you're going to miss out on some important settings that's going to cause problems down the line. So always when you're importing things into 3D Max, use the 3D Max dialog and go through File, Import. So we're going to navigate to that folder, Docs folder, 3D models. This is a DWG file, and I'm going to open up that first one, the Ascot. As you can see, this brings up the import options. Most important option that we need to check here is the incoming file units. Almost all architectural models and drawings are done in millimeters. So we use centimeters for our 3D Max units setup. So it's important that we click this rescale button and have the incoming file units to millimeters. All the rest of the settings down here can just be left at default. So we're going to click on OK. It's going to bring in our house. As you can see, it comes in with no materials, usually black. So I always like to turn on edged faces and just make it clay as well. Just makes it a lot easier to see. So just check out the model, see what we're up for. You can see it's not too bad a model. Everything's kind of separated, which makes it easier. It came with a bunch of layers, as you can see. The good thing about DWG files is that they come with layers, so it's going to make separating this all a lot easier. Some model formats like SketchUp and 3ds, OBJ, they don't come with layers, and it becomes a lot trickier to separate everything, because sometimes they put everything as one big object. But this one should be pretty straightforward. So the first thing we just need to check is that the scale is right. So what I always like to do is draw a 1 meter by 1 meter box and just eyeball it. We know that, like a standard door is usually about 90 centimeters wide, 80 to 90 centimeters. So we can see here that our box is about that wide. It's about the right scale. You can see there that would be approximately a meter. So we can assume that this scale is perfect. If the box is tiny or it's huge, that probably means you've got a problem with your scale and you need to double check. Get a set of plans for this particular house and get a reference point. So say if this post was 9 centimeters wide, then you'd measure this post and scale it up or down to make sure it's the right scale. In this case the scale is fine, so I'm going to delete that box. And next step is to start processing everything onto our layer system. So it comes with a whole bunch of layers which we don't want to use. So we're going to just go through and sort this out. So firstly I'm just going to turn off all the layers, and we're just going to go through one by one and organize this appropriately. So firstly, that's a garage door, so we're going to open up our building layer and drop this into garage door. This is a front door, so we're going to put that on the doors layer. These are all doors, so we're going to put that on the doors layer as well. We are going to remodel a couple of that front door and the garage door. We're going to get some better models from our library and replace those because they're pretty low poly. They don't look great in the scene. You can see sometimes AutoCAD and DWG files, they come with these random block objects. They're actually not, there's no actual object there. They're not assigned to anything, they're not attached to anything, it's not a group. So we can just delete them in this case, and then we're going to delete the unused layer. Move on to the next one, which is the windows. So with the windows, what we need to do is separate the glass from the window frames. We're going to remodel this window as well, but we'll do that at the end. So in this case we need to separate the glass, and this thing here is a window sill. That's actually going to be made out of brick, so it's a different material and would go on a different layer. So that's this part here, the big box down the bottom, is a sill, and we need to separate that. So the fastest way of separating all these, because these are all individual windows, the fastest way to do this is to just, I could select them all here, but I think I'm selecting these weird block things. So what we might do, and that doesn't allow us to turn everything to an edit poly, so I'm just going to go into our layer explorer, select those blocks and invisible random objects and delete them. Now we can right click, convert these all to an edit poly, which is going to enable us to attach them all together, which is going to make our life a lot faster. I'm just going to attach them. I'll show you an example of how the slow way of doing this, so you know the difference. So if I was to set this, detach this, I'd have to go in, select the windows, detach them, then go in and select the sill and detach that, and then go in, put the glass on the building glass layer, then drop the sill onto the sill layer, and then the window frame onto the window frame layer. And that's done. And then I have to go through and do that again for all of these windows one by one, which is the slow way of doing it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to attach them all together, and I'll show you how much faster that goes. So they're all attached now. Now I'm just going to go and select all the window glass. Make sure we get it all, every piece of window. Double check we've got them all. Detach. Put all the window pieces of glass on the glass layer all at once. Now I'm going to go through and do the same thing for the sills. So you can see this is just 10 times faster than doing it one by one. Oops. Alt click to deselect. So I'm just going in, getting all those sills. Got them all now. Detach. Drop all those sills on the sills layer. And we're done. Now I can drop all the window frames on the frames layer, and that's that done. So now I'm going to delete that unused empty layer. These are like some beams for the veranda out the back. So I'm going to put them on timber. They're usually timber beams, so put them on that layer. Now the cabinet work. So this is all like kitchen and bathrooms. So we're not going to see any of this in our render because this is just a front external render. So unless it's visible through the front windows, which occasionally like an ensuite or a bathroom is, or sometimes a kitchen, if it's visible through the front windows, then maybe these will be used, but in this case they're not. So we're just going to make a new layer and call it hide. We're going to turn that off, and we're just going to drop all this stuff. We're not going to delete it. We're just going to drop it all off into that hide layer, so that just in case we need it, we've got it there ready to go. But we know that we don't need to process it or do anything, add materials or textures or anything like that to it. So you can see sometimes you'll get some random layers. This one's called Cabinet Work Pen No 1, and you can see it's just a bunch of lines basically, so we don't need any of them. We can delete them. I think what we can actually see is anything that's got that pen number. I think that's pen signifies the lines that they're drawing. Seems to be layers that have just got dotted lines on them, so we can just go through and select all those pen numbers. See how, just double check there's no actual geometry on this. You can see they're all just lines, so they wouldn't render anyway, so we don't need any of them. They're just clogging up our scene. So we're going to delete them, and then just go through and delete all of these empty unused layers now. It's just going to make things a bit easier. So we are now at ceiling features. So these, again, I'm just going to go through and select the block objects in the list in the Layer Explorer and delete them. And this leaves us with, these are cornices. So we'll keep them, we'll put them on the ceiling layer in our building. Delete that. Fixing carpentry. So this is things like shelves and cabinet stuff. So we don't really, again, we're not really going to see any of this stuff in our shot unless it's visible through a window. So we're not going to delete it. We're just going to put it on our hide layer. just in case we do need to use it later, but probably not. So the floor slabs layer, that looks fine. Let's again delete these random block things. Drop that onto our slab layer. Then new fixing carpentry. Again, there's some more shelves, so we're going to put them on our hide layer again. Delete these unused layers. New plumbing, so plumbing, have we got any other? There's a new plumbing and plumbing layer, which is just going to be, again, a whole bunch of kitchen and bathroom stuff, which we don't need. So I'm going to delete these random blocks and then select all this stuff and put it on the hide layer. Because we're unlikely we're going to use them. Delete those unused layers. So there's some paving, I think. So we're going to drop this onto the landscape layer. So let's put it on paving in our landscape layer. Delete that. New walls. Where is that? Okay, so this is like a column at the back. So again, this is where you want to consult your elevations and plans. In this case, we don't actually have an elevation. All we've got is this, this image and this schedule. But in this case, this pillar is right at the very back of the house, so we're not going to see it in this render anyway. So we're just going to drop it on walls rendered layer, because it's likely to just be a rendered wall at the back. Get rid of that block. Delete the unused layer. Roof and gutter. So this layer takes a little bit of processing. Again, it's an edit. We want to basically, anything that we need to do stuff to, we want to convert it to an editable poly. So I'm just going to convert all these to an edit poly and then attach them all to each other. It's going to make things a bit quicker and easier. Make sure you get all the pieces. Okay, so they're all now one object. This horizontal piece here is actually a soffit, so it's a completely different material to our gutters. Gutters are usually metal, aluminium. These soffit things, which are sort of like the underside of the overhang of the exterior roof, they're usually like plasterboard or something like that, so that's a completely different material. They're usually like a white plasterboard, so they're called soffits, so we put them on the soffit layer. And now we've got all our gutters and fascias, so this top part here that collects the water, that's called the gutter, and the part underneath it, this vertical part just here, that's called the fascia. So we need to actually separate them, because in a lot of the time they have a different color from the gutter. The gutter might be, you know, like a dark grey metal, and then the fascia might be like painted white or something like that. So we need to separate all of those. The easy way of doing that is usually in the left or front viewport, and you can just go in and select the gutters by themselves. You can see here it's easy to select those that kind of overhanging. Select that there. Just go around, select any that are easy to get in this way. And there. Looks like there's one there. There. That one's selected part of the fascia, so we're just going to alt click that. Now do the same in the front viewport. So that there, that's a fascia, so we don't want that selected. There's some more gutter. And then just go and double check your selection in this viewport. Yeah, looks like we've pretty much got all the bits of gutter separated, selected. So that's good. I'm going to right click, detach. Now we can put that thing we just detached on the gutters layer, and that leaves all this stuff, which is the fascia. We'll put that on the fascia layer. And that's that. So next, delete that unused layer, the roof structure. You can see here that this part here is not really a part of the roof. If I look at my image, you can see that it's actually this front, part of that front wall. So I'm just going to put that on a walls layer, walls cladding for now. We'll rename this later. And then just double check none else. This stuff is actually a wall. It looks fine. So roof structure, let's just delete all these blocks again. So now we can put all of that onto our roof layer. And we are going to remodel those, we would remodel those gutters and roofs and fascias. And in this case, this is a corrugated iron roof, so we need to do model that corrugated iron roof. But there's a whole other process for that, and we've created a separate tutorial which runs you through that. So for now, we're just going to leave it as it is. So this looks like the driveway. So this is actually it. So that bit there is the driveway. That bit there is like a garden bed on the side. That bit there is like a paver. And this is grass, I think. So this bit there we can put on the landscape driveway layer. This bit and this bit are bits of paver. So paving. So we'll put them on the paving layer. This bit I think would have to be a garden bed where plants go. So that's mulch, and this is probably either garden bed or grass or something like that. So that's, we'll put that on the grass layer. Now we've got some external walls. So again, this is where we consult our elevations. In this case, you can see there's these white walls here is one sort of render. Then this lighter grey is kind of another wall, another material, different type. So we want that on a different layer. And then obviously this bit in here is like a brick wall. So we want that on a different layer. So you can see that part there is part of the brick wall. So we're going to put that onto our walls brick layer. All the rest of this looked like it was part of the rendered wall layer. So I'm just going to quickly delete all these blocks. So this looked like it was rendered wall. So I'm going to put that. That's the standard sort of main render. We've got a few more walls here. So that was part of the brick wall, you can see, and this was part of that sort of gabled frame that goes around the brick, which we've put on walls cladding, which we'll rename walls render 2. And I'm really sure those parts there are probably part of that as well. Not entirely sure, so we're just going to throw them on. That's going to go on the walls interior. These are all interior walls, so we drop them on there. Now we can delete that wall site. Blocks in that one. So again, those two things there are those posts, which have got a different material as we saw in the schedule. You can see here those posts, a wattle monument. So we need to get them on a different layer. Just going to select them, and we'll put them on. We won't have a layer for columns or posts, so we'll just put them on the louvers layer and then rename it. Rename posts. All these are, so this I think is an exterior wall, and that's the main render. So those two can go on the walls rendered layer, and probably all those supporting walls as well, I think. Go on the walls rendered layer. All this stuff is interior walls, I believe, so we'll put that on the walls interior. We're going to double check all this later anyway. Okay, so that was the last of the layers that came imported. So now we're just going to go over and check our work. So I'm just going to turn on and off these layers. Assets layer, we don't have anything on. Building layer, everything's on there. That looks good. We haven't accidentally deleted anything. We haven't moved anything. It all looks fine. Camera lights layer, still got the camera and lights there, so we haven't messed anything up. Hide layer, that's just got all our kitchens and bathroom stuff that we're probably not going to be visible, so we don't need to muck around with that too much. You can see here there's some random stuff. This is probably like a meter box or a gas thing on the outside of the wall. Now our landscape layer looks good, it's got all that sort of stuff on it. So now we go through our building layer, and we're just going to go through this one by one. So we can just firstly we can delete all the unused layers here. So there's no downpipes or balustrade or fixtures, fittings, or stairs in this house. So we're going to delete all of them. And now we're just going to go through, turn all the layers off, and go through one by one. Just double check we don't have anything. So we've got a whole bunch of blocks on that layer. I'm going to get rid of them. That looks fine. We can just quickly go through and check for those blocks now. I'm just going to go through and delete them all. That's good. Okay, we got a whole bunch of blocks there, which we don't need. Okay, so that's that. Let's just go through again. So the ceiling layer is all good. What we can now do is just, so I'm going to right click, convert to editable poly. We want all these objects to be editable poly. Probably the fastest way of doing this is now to just turn everything on and convert to editable poly. Now I'm just going to turn everything off. Go through the ceiling. So the ceiling is all good. We want to add a UVW map to this. So now we're just going through and adding all the details to everything. We're going to remodel some parts, add UVW mapping, all that sort of stuff. So for this, the ceiling we don't need to do much, it's fine. We're just going to add a UVW box map with real world map size ticked. That's all we need to do that. These doors, so this front door, we've actually got a, it's pretty lacking in detail. It doesn't have any chamfers, it's pretty an ordinary model. So what we're going to do is replace it with one of the doors we've got. We've already modelled a whole bunch of doors, which are the common sort of entry doors. So you can see here, this door here is more or less that exact same door. So we can just drag that door in and resize it, and we'll have a much better model that will render and look more detailed and realistic in our render. So it's important that we model these parts, remodel some of these parts that are going to be close to camera and visible. So you can see there it's just the wrong way around. So we're going to use our mirror, quick mirror tool up there to just flip it on the x-axis, click OK, drag it into position. You can see it's a little bit wider, but that shouldn't matter. I'm going to get it right on the right side there. See, it's a tiny bit wider, so we just need to open the group, select the door frame, door, and just move that over a touch so it's occupying the right space. Let's have a look. Height wise, it looks pretty much perfect, maybe a touch too low. So I'm going to bring that up to the top of there so it's touching the wall. On the ground, that's perfect. So we can now delete that old door and group close. Okay, so now we can see we've got the door is just much more detailed and photorealistic, so that'll render a lot better. All these other doors are inside the house, we won't see them, so we can leave them alone. Go back into our layers, so the doors are good. Fascia, as I said, a lot of the time these fascias and gutters are a specific profile, so there is a process for remodeling them, which we've got in another tutorial. So for now, that's fine. We're just going to add a UVW box map to them all. The garage door, again, this is pretty low detail. It's not going to render all that nicely. So, and considering it takes up quite a large amount of the space, we're just going to go through and replace that. So you can see we've got a garage door that's really similar to this. So we're just going to merge that into the scene. It's got a few missing textures there, but that doesn't matter. We'll retexture it later anyway. Drop that in there. You can see just a process of resizing it. So we're just going to move it into the right, onto the side where that is there. Oops. Right on the edge there. You can see it's not quite wide enough. I'm just going to open that, move it, move these vertices over to the edge to get the right size. And same with this part. So there's only two parts to this. Just going to move them over to that edge, get that right. We can delete this handle because this garage door doesn't have a handle. And now we just need to get the height right. So I'm just going to go over to my front viewport. You can see here that top bit needs to come up to there, right there, and now that means this bit needs to be expanded as well. So I'm just going to stretch this out. Top there, make that a bit easier to see. And get that pretty close to the line. In that case, it's pretty close. So, and then you can do the rest just with one edit poly. Obviously, we want these garage door panels to all be a uniform height. So just move that up there. That's fine. That one will be a few millimeters bigger than the others, but that doesn't really matter. Okay, so there's our garage door. We can delete the old one. And we've got our new one in there. Close the group. And that's that done. So let's keep going through. Make sure that's been coming on the right layer. Garage door, our glass layer is good. So we're going to actually remodel that front window, so I know we can just delete those bits of glass. Glass is good, you don't need to put UVW maps on that. Gutters, if we're keeping, we'll remodel them, but we'll just throw a box map on them in case. The roof, again, we're going to be remodeling the corrugated iron on that, so we won't need to do anything to that, but it all looks good. The sills, again, they'll probably be a render color, so we'll throw a UVW box map on those. The slab, same thing, just a quick box map, otherwise they look fine. The soffits, again, exact same thing, just drag a UVW box map onto them. Same with this timber, UVW box map, that's all we need to do. Now the walls, we're just going to double check we've got all these right. So that's definitely the walls. Render 2 is the outside walls. That's the other things. Those need to go on our posts layer. Got caught up in there somehow, so we just remove that out of there. Posts are all good. So the walls rendered, that looks about right. So it looks like we've got the three different types of walls. So we've got the brick walls, the interior walls, the render, contrasting render, and then the main render. So if you again double check your schedule. So we've got a main render, which is that white, and the contrasting render, which is that light grey, and then check your elevation. So everything that's that main render is that white colour, and then that contrasting render is that light grey, and then obviously we've got the bricks and interior walls, so 4 different types of walls. So we need to make sure they're all on separate layers, which we've got. And then the last but not least is this window frame layer. Again, I told you we're gonna remodel that window because it's at the very front and it's not very detailed. So I'm just going to leave that there as our reference for now. And we're going to go to connector again, go into architectural windows, and you'll see here we've got an aluminium fixed window. So it may look like it's only got one window there, but when you open this up, it's actually got all the different window kind of options you can think of. In this case, there's 4 different panels, so we just need to use this one here will be the one we're going to use. So I'm just going to delete all the rest of them, drag this one over to where our window is, position it and resize it. So drop that in there. In the front view. Sometimes what I'm going to do is just quickly grab these vertices, drag it up to be the right height. Drag these vertices over to the edge. This is why I quite like keeping the front and top and left viewports for this sort of stuff. It just really enables you to move things around, get them precise really quickly. So put that in the middle where that is, the mullions. And now we need to just adjust that mullion, get that where it's supposed to be, right about there. And that's that. Now, as you can see, the original window frame here has actually got an awning window in one of them, and you can tell that when you look at the elevations and plans. You can see they've usually got like a dotted line, which signifies that that window can be opened, and you can see that there's like a frame within the frame. So we actually need to convert our window a little bit. So you see, I'm just going to I'm going to delete that old window. So we've just got our window, the new window we've got, and we're going to go through and just tweak this now. So what we can do is we can remove that bit of glass because we're going to get a new piece. We're going to go to connector again and bring in an aluminium awning window. Again, these come in with a whole bunch of different options, different sizes and shapes, different panels, amounts. So you can see there, we just need the single one. Delete all the rest. Drag this over to our window. Position it where we need it. So we don't need this outside frame. So again, we're just going to delete that. Makes it simple. Position this where we need it. That goes about there in the frame. I'm just going to rescale, resize this so it sits in there. Obviously now it's not the right height. Oops. sits about there within the frame. Grab the top vertex and drag them down to be in the right size. And then you can see we've got the frame within the frame of that awning window. And so that's that. So you can see we just need to make sure that those are now all on the window frames layer. Window frames. And we can delete those unused layers. All the other window frames look fine. You can add a UVW box map to those. And that's that. Now we're going to quickly go through our landscape layer because that had some stuff on it as well. You can see we've got a driveway, pavers, all that sort of stuff. Just double check that that's all correct. We're going to remodel this landscape again later anyway, but that will be another tutorial. But so now we're just double checking that it's all layered appropriately and all looks fine. We can convert them all to an edit poly as well, just to be thorough. So that's the landscapes done. Now we're just going to go through and double check. So it's always super important to just double check everything. So again, our house looks good. Check that we haven't accidentally deleted anything. We don't have any duplicates or double faces or any weird things that don't look right. We can turn on the landscape as well just to make sure. So now again, just going to go in and check our layers one by one. It's really important that you double check everything because you got to make the less mistakes we can make here, the less time it's going to take someone else checking, whoever's further down, like a 3D artist, lighting artist. Don't want to spend too much time checking all of these, so just make sure you're thorough, double check your work, spend a minute or two at the end just double checking everything. If you catch any errors or things you haven't done right, then just fix it up before you save it out. So the fascia looks fine, just double checking that layer. Garage door we've remodeled, looks good. The glass is all in one layer, that's fine. Gutters, posts, they're good. The roof. Actually, with those posts, because they're just boxes, what I might actually do is just quickly remodel them because they won't. It'd be nice to be able to put a chamfer on them. So just quickly go 2.5 deep. Make sure we're on the post layer. And quickly model a box, make it the right height. Just going to add an edit poly modifier to that, move the post down, you can drag that down to the bottom there, drag that to the top. Yeah, if there's something that's really simple to remodel and it only takes a minute, then remodel it. We're going to add a really quick chamfer to these, 0.2. All the defaults with the chamfers. Also really important that you go down to the smoothing output and click on smooth chamfers only and tick the smooth to adjacent box and then change the threshold to 90. If you don't do that with all your chamfers, you get this weird pillowing effect which does not look good. So now we can just copy and paste that post over as an instance. That way if we need to tweak anything to one, it'll happen in the other. And now we can just delete those old boxes. If I can select them. I think we select there, and then deselect those things. No, don't know what happened. Yeah. Delete the old posts. I'm left with our nice chamfer. Might just add another segment to that. So again, really important that you keep your stack, so box, edit poly, then keep the chamfer so that I'm able to now go in and adjust the, say if this wasn't looking right at 0.2 of a millimeter chamfer and I wanted it to be a bit bigger so it looked a bit more rounded corners, I could go in and easily adjust that without having to remodel anything. Then just add a UVW box map at the end, so everything's got proper UVWs. So the posts are done, roof is fine, we're going to remodel that in another tutorial. The window sills are all good, we've got UVW map on them, the slab's good, got the mapping, the soffit's got our UVW maps and they look fine, timber, the brick walls there are good, and we didn't put a mapping on that, so we need to make sure we put UVW box map on that. That's why it's always good to double check. So I just picked up that I forgot to put a UVW box map on that. So that's why we're double checking these. Same with all these, I haven't got a box map on all of them, so select them, UVW box map. That's done. Walls, these ones, don't think I put a map on them either. So UVW box map. If it's all one material, then you can apply a box map to the whole thing. So typically anything on one layer, you can apply a box UVW mapping to all of that instead of one by one. So UVW box map for that because it's all the one texture. Window frames we remodeled. For these we don't need to, these particular models, they've got a multi-sub-object material, so we can select the glass. They actually come with a glass material already on that glass panel, so we don't need to put the glass on a different glass layer. Window frames are all good. Now again, just turn everything on, have another look around, make sure you haven't missed anything, accidentally deleted everything, everything still looks clean. Your layers are all sorted, everything's neat and organised. You've deleted any unused layers, so we're going to delete these now. We're not going to use them. Joinery. We're going to keep the roof ridges layer because we'll be using that again when we do the roof. We've hidden a whole bunch of stuff. We've got our camera lights turned off. This is all good to go. We can now save it. Again, always worth just doing another quick double check, making sure there's gaps where there needs to be. The garage door there, you can see actually looks a little bit low. So I might need to just go in and adjust that. So I'm just going to select those two walls so I can see what height we're supposed to be at. You can see there's a really big gap there. That looks silly when we try and render it. So all really important to try and make sure that's at the right height. So we're going to bring that down a bit. It's always good to leave a little gap there because in real life there's always a little gap at the bottom. So maybe, like a centimetre or something like that at the bottom. Just use your common sense to work out what the gap would be. And now we need to open that group, move that thing back to the top of that wall, which is right there, I think. Yep. And now I'm just going to scale this up again, get it right. That looks about right. I'll actually bring a little bit more. Yeah, that's good. That's so obviously really important to get your gaps and things right. If things are sticking through the floor, like if this was too far down and it was going through the floor, it'd look bad in the render. If there was no gap at all, it would look bad. So it's important to think about where there's little gaps and make sure you model those in the scene. Okay, so now we can unhide, go in, double check there's no weird gaps anywhere else. The door looks fine. Usually best to just go around, zoom in and out, have a look, see if there's anything strange happening. That looks fine. Okay, close that group. So yeah, double check, triple check your work, make sure you've got everything right. That way it saves everybody a lot of time and is definitely the most efficient way of doing things as a team. And this all looks pretty good, so I'm going to save it. And that is the end of this part of the tutorial. There'll be another tutorial on how to tackle modelling the landscape and adding fencing and garden beds and all that sort of stuff, and then also the roof and gutters is another process with a separate tutorial as well. Okay, thanks guys.